Hello, and welcome to another episode of Solipsist Watched. I'm your host, the Social Solipsist, and this week I watched Moana from 2016. Now, as I've mentioned before, I like to delve into the world of, well, actually, I just recently watched Inside Out. I like to delve into the world of movies made for kids because I think it's an undersung area of cinema, and one that is sometimes rightly maligned and sometimes unfairly. And Moana is one of those, big names that has come out in the last few years that I have just not gotten around to watching, even though it got, a lot of praise for sort of being a good kids film, as well as being like a progression in the right direction, especially for Disney, because there's a whole dark age of just real bad animated films for kids in the mid 2000s. Anyway, I'm digressing already. Moana's pretty great. I like it a lot. I'll just start out with that. I have to say that after watching now a bunch of animated kids films, Disney and Pixar mostly, from the last few years, or the last, let's say 15 years, I'm starting to have stronger opinions about some of them because I'm, comparing them sort of one to one. I wasn't the biggest fan, but I still enjoyed Inside Out. I wasn't real big fan of Encanto. I thought it was kind of weak. And I really loved Turning Red. That's the name of it, right? Did I get that wrong? Fuck. Anyway, because I thought that one was really strong. This one is sort of kind of in the middle of a few of them. It's probably on the upper end, and I think as far as kids movies I would recommend to people who have kids right now, I think it's a pretty strong contender. As the film critic in me says that it is a substantially weaker entry than Turning Red, but better than Inside Out and Encanto. And I'll get into some of the specifics of that. Right off the bat, it's important and worth acknowledging that this is a different setting than Disney's usual fare, which is great. It is a female-focused film with a non-white, non-European cultural view to it. It is, about a Polynesian group and a Polynesian family, and some more indigenous cultural things, and it seems to have had a really respectful and intentional effort to show I don't know how to phrase this properly, to show an unexpected, or a non-traditional, in the sense of it's not usually Disney's fare, or hasn't been historically, to show something that isn't just another pretty white woman, or pretty white man for that matter. So props to them. I always say these things with a grain of salt, because I don't give any corporation credit for. I don't give any corporation full credit, because even if there were a bunch of people inside of it that were saying, yes, this is super important, and they were very genuine about all of it, ultimately the decision always came down to money. The reason why this got passed and was produced was ultimately about monetary appeal, and it always will be. That's just the way of things, unfortunately. But that's not to discount the importance of a story like this being told, and a story about people who don't just look white. So really happy to see a not only a story in a different culture, but one that doesn't read as just a direct translation, right? You could change the races. You could take a typical, 90s or pre-90s Disney princess story and just for want of a better phrase, put a coat of paint on it and change everybody's race, and it would still feel the same. This feels different, and I think it's worth acknowledging. As far as I understand it, they did a lot of collaboration with various Polynesian people and groups, and a lot of the staff and the actors have various Polynesian backgrounds. There's most of the actors, in fact, I think, or most of the main characters have some Polynesian background, whether it's like New Zealander or Hawaiian or sorry, not New Zealand, but Maori, or there's a bunch of others. And so, like, having those people present as well is super important for not just having a bunch of white directors directing a non-white story. Anyway, there is a bit of a weird thing. I am talking about this not only to say good things about it, but also because there's some weird writing background on this that I didn't realize until I was looking it up later. So, and this is going to transition into a different thing, which is sort of why I think I missed this movie. So, there were a bunch of writers on this. The original writer is Taika Waititi, who is now a lot more known now that he's directed a bunch of the Marvel films, written and directed a bunch of Marvel films. And obviously we've talked about him before in the context of What We Do in the Shadows and a couple of other things where I think he's come up as well. Some other recurring individuals as well in the acting side of things. Taika Waititi wrote the original script, but and a bunch of people made modifications to it over the years, rewrites and things. But only one person has writing credit on this, which is bizarre. And that person is Jared Bush, who I can't find basically I can't find much information about. So he's Jared Bush seems to be somebody that Disney brings in a lot to do final edits on a film, and I didn't delve deep into it to figure out like whether he frequently gets the sole writing credit, but this is kind of weird, and especially because a lot of the original writing and the original rewrites were done by Polynesian people. I don't actually know if Jared Bush is Polynesian or not. Something tells me probably not. And so regardless of the potential race problem there's also just why didn't you give everybody credit for writing on this? Like, I get that you don't probably want a huge writers list, but give writers their credit. I mean, especially right now since we have the SAG-AFTRA strike going on, the writer strike. It's like, give people their appropriate credit for doing work on films, please. What else is weird about this is Jared Bush, I believe, is also the writer or co-writer and co-director on Zootopia, which came out the same year as this. And Zootopia was such a blockbuster. Like, this movie did really well. But Zootopia overshadowed it by a substantial margin. And I think that may have had something to do with Moana not doing even better. I'm not going to make too substantial a presumption there. I'm just saying it's a little iffy. And if I was going to be really cynical, I would go as far as to say I think Disney may have hedged their bets in 2016 and decided that Moana was a gamble and that they wanted something that was more likely to be a real blockbuster, or that they thought would be more of a blockbuster, which is unfortunate, but I'm still glad that Moana did as well as it did and has continued to have a life and appreciation after the fact. I watched this. I was the only one. I watched this with some friends, and I was the only one who had never seen this before. And they were reflecting both upon their own experience having watched it before, and their like family and friends experience having watched it. And they're like the merchandising and stuff like that, which we could get into why that's both good and bad. Anyway, it's good that this is different and also has had a continued life and hasn't just gotten, buried under the deluge of other Disney properties. Anyway, I've digressed substantially again. No surprise there. I tend to do that. This is a great. This is all around great in terms of its production. It is really pretty, for one. The animations are excellent. It even uses a variety of different animation styles. Like, obviously, the main CG animation dominates, but throughout the film there are a couple of different times when they use intercut scenes of different animation styles, which work super well, are a nice like differentiation if they use them for montage or just for like artistic reasons. Some of them are intercut with some of the songs and stuff. And overall, the visual aesthetic is much more pleasing and much more clear than a lot of the things I've watched recently. I would classify the style as not minimalist, but definitely going for a less visually busy style. Something that I have not been super happy with in some of the others is that the visuals can get kind of muddy if you have too many things on screen. And this film is going for very clear use of landscapes, light and dark, color and black and white, and all these things that make a much more visually vibrant and visually dynamic production. I don't actually remember what I said exactly about Encanto, but my memory is that I found a lot of that film to be kind of muddy, kind of too much going on, where they were trying to do certain things visually, but it was just so busy and chaotic that I had trouble visually following. This seems to have had much better direction in terms of making sure that everything is visually distinct and easy to absorb. And I think especially when you're telling a story that has some like quite a bit of like magical realism and suspension of disbelief necessary, that especially for kids, in order to ensure they're following correctly, like following the story and the plot elements and the items and objects that are and people who are important to the progression of the plot, having a clear visual style is super important, if not for all of the other obvious reasons in addition to that. So visually super impressive, very clean. Special shout out to the water. There is a ton of water in this film, no surprise, and it looks fantastic. So to whatever technical side people were doing the work to make the water graphics look as good as they did, a special shout out to them. Especially because it can be, just sort of a background thing and may not, it sort of gets blurry after a while if you're not paying as much attention to it. So I just feel like it deserves a specific call out. A ton of the other things look fantastic too. Character designs are wonderful all over the place, really distinctive, exaggerated in all the right ways to like give you especially for kids movies. I think I've talked about this before, having visually distinct character designs, so you can basically define a character based on a few visual cues and things like that, and you can follow them through growth. Anyway, I'm digressing again. If you couldn't tell, I really liked this film, and it's a strong entry. As far as some of the other production elements, I think this movie has some great songs. Are they top 5, top 10 ever? I don't, probably not. There's maybe 1 or 2 in there that I think are extra strong. The rest are sort of definitely good, but not nearly as memorable for me. and that gets into some of the problems I have with the film, but I'll get into those in a few minutes. I think the music production wise is extremely well done. I think the songs are nicely spread out throughout the film and do good storytelling as well as just being, catchy and fun. Sometimes they overshadow the plot a little bit, and again, I'm going to come back to that. But like, as far as, being a great musical production for kids, definitely very good work there. Alongside that, the writing and the dialogue that is present in the film is really solid. This goes into the characterization of various characters as well, but the defining who the characters are and what their motivations are and how they present themselves, and keeping a balance between a light tone and a light and humorous kind of thing going throughout to keep the tone relatively light, especially for kids, while also maintaining a through line of, an imminent threat to the livelihood of these people, and to our main character's struggle with her motivations, her belief in herself, and the people around her who may or may not be helping or hurting her progress towards her own personal goals and her goals for her tribe. It's really well balanced throughout. It does. Okay, I'm gonna go off into the parts where it gets a little hairy for a little bit here. It does end up with the plot being a little bit thin, where it gets to the plot gets a little too caught up in the individual scenes that it wanted to have, and it sort of drowns out the core plot and some of the elements of the character development that I think I've talked about before. I think are some of the most important things for a kids movie to, not necessarily teach a lesson in so many words, but to show character growth, because that is what, things should be for kids. I don't know, like, I don't know how else to say that. Kids movies should, it is easier for kids to absorb a character growth thing than it is for a really complex story, like a really complex mystery or something like that. And so having strong character growth that shows how a person in a bad situation gets out of a bad situation or improves their circumstances or whatever else are super important things. And because of some of the structural change or the structural choices that were made in terms of the spacing of the songs and the overall length of the film, and the individual plot beats, especially right at the beginning, near the beginning of the film, it feels a little like Moana doesn't have as much agency, and that mostly these scenes, it feels more like the scenes were written before the plot was written rather than vice versa. And so the plot is serving the delivery of the scenes rather than the scenes serving the delivery of the plot. Is this a critical issue? Does it substantially hurt the film? No. It's I'm being nitpicky, because I think they could have fit in more time to see Moana's growth and the exploration of her personal and familial struggles, and given a stronger conclusion to the film that isn't simply she completed her quest and had her personal growth as a result. It would be more that she had her personal growth and then as a result was able to complete her quest, and the other people around her would be acknowledging her, instead of, as it is in the film, them acknowledging her mostly for her success in her quest they didn't believe in, it would be more focused on them appreciating her for her growth, and as a result, also her success at helping this greater quest. So it's like it's not hurting it a lot. It's just me being picky. I know all of you who have watched a bunch of these are really shocked to hear me say that, but it's important. And unfortunately, or well, no, I shouldn't say unfortunately. That's rude. Right now, Turning Red is just the best film that I've seen in a long time, as far as like doing all the things I think it should do, and being a really good production for like showing the world to kids, and being really earnest and honest. It's hard not to compare it, right? I just, unfortunately, it's in my head now. So like, I think this movie's still really strong. Another side note, just digression. This was also released in a couple of other, with dubs in a couple of other languages, including I think Hawaiian, Tahitian, and Maori. I don't remember exactly, but it had a couple of like Polynesian language dubs, which nobody would have said much if they didn't do that. But hey, credit where it's due for going to the point of like redubbing the whole film with a bunch of the actors who were in the original film, because a bunch of the actors are Polynesian and speak various Polynesian languages. To the point of the casting, everybody, I think a lot of the actors are recognizable, but actually I think it's to this film's credit that the voice direction did a really good job of not making it super obvious or relying on the fame of some of these actors to sort of lead the film. The main character Moana is actually just some 14-year-old that they like cast in a big casting call, who had not, I think, done any voiceover before. She does great. I'm gonna butcher her name. Chloe Alui Cravalho, I think. I'm probably butchering it. I'm so sorry. She does a really great job, and until I found out that she was like 14 or 15 and had not done shit before, like, never would have guessed. She does an amazing job. Dwayne Johnson being cast is definitely a choice, and I knew that going in, but I almost immediately forgot it when his character was on screen, because he actually has the capability of turning off the Dwayne Johnson voice, which is funny because I have criticized him before mostly for his live action stuff, where he just plays Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, and it's like it's mostly a toned down version of his WWE character. But that's neither here nor there. He does a really solid job in this, and he's got a very distinctive voice, but it, in a good way, does not come through super strong in this film. There are certain phrases where it's like, oh yeah, that's The Rock, but largely it doesn't, and that's great. I also didn't recognize Jermaine Clement until he started singing, and then I was like, oh, that's Jermaine. I know Jermaine's singing voice. That's him. He's from Flight of the Conchords and a frequent collaborator with Taika Waititi and a bunch of other people. Anyway, he's fantastic. I'm really glad they had him in there as a character, to do a character. And everybody else, we also, I had not seen the film. My friends had. When the character played by Tamura Morrison came on, one of my friends was like, "Is that Boba Fett?" I'm like, "I think it is." And I looked it up. I was like, "Oh yeah, it's Boba Fett / Jango Fett." He's Tamura Morrison has been in the industry for a long time and has kind of a distinctive voice as well. But like, again, not distracting, just sort of like cool that he's there. Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent again. The casting's really strong. And also there's Alan Tudyk playing a chicken, because it's Alan Tudyk and he's just playing a chicken, and he's just a great, cool guy who reportedly, I think at some point said that was one of the hardest like vocal performances he's done, which cracks me up. Yeah, anyway, did I have other things? I've digressed so many times at this point. I can't remember if I've missed anything. I think this one's really strong. I think there are other things that are better, and I think there are things with more memorable songs. But I think that as far as what this represents, and like its overall quality as a piece of cinema, as well as what it represents in terms of a cultural sea change, no pun intended, from going away from the traditional white Disney princess films. I think this is great. Also, didn't realize until watching this that the like a big part of the like "you're a Disney princess" meme came out of like directly out of the like the text of this film of Maui just being like, "Yeah, you're a princess." That cracks me up. So anyway, I'm digressing too many times. This thing's pretty good. I liked it a lot. Anyway, thank you guys for watching another episode of Solipsist Watched. I've been your host, the Social Solipsist, and I'll see you guys next time.